As much as I am looking forward to sitting down and playing Starfield for the first time at some point next year, I do have a few big concerns.
I know your breasts weren't satisfied with the Xbox Bethesda showcase, and neither were my breasts. You have feathers on your breasts, and I have hair on my breasts.
Already, there's so many warning signs in just this small gameplay demonstration.
And I'm gonna be honest, Starfield does not look too good.
Like, how can 1,000 worlds be anything more than a bunch of places that look similar?
Bethesda did it, everyone! They managed to copy No Man's Sky and make another Skyrim game at the same time!
And they even promised to include more RPG mechanics. Excuse me.
The mainstream media and content creators seem hell-bent on not liking the game.
At worst, it'll be a mile wide and inch deep, shallow content.
An empty galaxy filled with copy and pasted planets.
And that's kind of the problem with infinite exploration, is that a lot of that relies on procedural generation.
Or have the same procedurally generated aliens that show up, or just what kind of content is on there?
With a lot to see, but like not a lot of it is actually worth seeing. And at best, it's like a really huge game, and there's so much to do, and you're just overwhelmed, and like me with Skyrim.
I will never finish it.
I don't know, you tell me. Am I crazy for thinking this?
Why do you want to kill me?
I don't want to kill you. What would I do without you?
I wasn't sure what I was going to do. The harsh criticism of this highly anticipated video game hurt my fanboy feelings so bad. I knew I had to do something. Something extreme. Something frightening. Like...
Logically discuss my thoughts and opinions through a series of concessions and disagreements concerning the criticism of Starfield. That's right, in today's video, we're going to be responding to a series of common critiques regarding the Starfield gameplay trailer. And since Force Gaming made one of the most grounded and reasonable videos on the topic, I'll be taking a look at some of his finer points and giving my 2 cents worth. Everyone knows the internet is short on opinions these days, so I'll take one for the team like Noble Six and grace your humble hearts and minds with a few of my own unbiased takes. Just try to remember that I too am obviously excited for Starfield, but may find myself in agreement with some of the common concerns regarding Bethesda's new sci-fi space RPG. But hey, that's the beauty of the internet, right? We can all disagree without unaliving each other, right?
And yes, we're gonna unalive them. We can't unalive them!
Alright, so without wasting any more time, let's get into it.
Starfield is the next real Bethesda game.
Okay, so I did some research and I can confirm this is correct. Starfield is the next Bethesda game, so I do agree.
It's also their first new IP in over 25 years, a chance to try something wholly new, and with that, they've said that their goal is to take what we've enjoyed about the Elder Scrolls and Fallout and bring it to a much larger scale, bring it out into space. And with that pitch, there is a lot to be excited for.
Fair enough. We'll keep it light and agreeable and ease into the criticism.
Like a lot of you, I'm sure, I've loved my time with Bethesda RPGs, largely because they are such unique games.
Wrong.
That is absolutely
wrong.
Proved over and over again.
Wrong.
They build these rich, deep, interactive worlds that are so immersive, loaded with backstory and lore and characters.
Okay, you guys, just hang in there. I promise we're getting to the negative.
Hidden secrets and things to discover at just about every turn, coupled with an engine that, for all its flaws, is highly modifiable, adding a lot of longevity. And there's the fact that literally no one makes games like Bethesda. There are no direct competitors. Plenty of open-world RPGs exist, don't get me wrong, but they're also not quite the same. Bethesda RPGs, while not without flaws, are really unique. However,
that's the word I was looking for.
I do have a few big concerns. Some of it is issues Bethesda has always had with their games, like poor performance and lower end visual quality.
Come on, I want you to do it, I want you to do it, come on, hit me.
But also, there are added concerns surrounding, for example, their new approach of replacing entirely handcrafted worlds with scale. Massive and quite possibly quite uninteresting scale. There's 1,000 planets. There's probably not much to do on most of them, but hey, there's 1,000 of them. And then on top of that, there's also Bethesda's recent direction over these past 8 years with serial re-releases, phone games, a live service game, and a modern day approach to monetization.
Alright, you guys, cancel your spiritual pre-orders. Nails in the coffin, that's it.
I agree.
It's true. I concede. Those are all valid points. Before we get carried away, let's unpack some of this and try to address these very valid points. Let's start with the poor performance and lower end visual quality. Now, in some ways, referring to the performance of Bethesda games traditionally as poor, I would say, is an understatement. But I would 100% chalk that up to the infamous creation engine and all of its limitations and just pure jankiness. Now, to help you understand, as someone who plays on a high-end gaming PC, I've literally had to mod just about every Bethesda game I've played just to get rid of the hard frame cap, so I can take advantage of my hardware and higher refresh rate monitor. If you've always played on console, I'm sure these games have run a lot better for you than PC. You see, the way Bethesda built its creation engine, the actual speed at which the game runs is tied to the frame rate that you're running. If you unlock the frame rate to higher than 60 in most cases, the game itself speeds up and a lot of the mechanics will become completely broken or unplayable. If you're wondering, but Starfield guy, just set your monitor to 60 Hz. Well, unfortunately it's not that simple. Not only does playing at 60 FPS underutilize your hardware, depending on what resolution you're playing at, but it also introduces unbearable levels of input lag and other performance issues. There are workarounds for playing at higher refresh rates with less stutter, input lag, and poor performance, but it mostly involves knowing how to tweak the game either through your AMD or NVIDIA control panel settings in Windows, or by knowing what mods to download so you can essentially jailbreak the game. Fortunately, Bethesda has patched many of their games more recently to allow players on next-gen hardware to enjoy them, but not without some technical workarounds. Though we don't know a whole lot about Creation Engine 2, which is what Starfield is built upon, hopefully many of these issues will be alleviated when it comes out. So as far as the visual fidelity, the graphics and textures and all that, I've personally never had a problem with the graphics in any Bethesda game, save an older game that I'm playing in the modern day. No, Bethesda games have never stood at the forefront of visual fidelity and immersion when compared to some of the more cinematic AAA games, such as PlayStation Studios games. But I don't think that Bethesda games' visuals are lacking in a way that is remarkable enough to be so heavily critical of them. I found Skyrim and Fallout 4's visuals to be pretty on par with what you'd expect from a AAA developer. I think that people have just come to expect a certain level of polish that is much easier to achieve on a far less open-ended and complex game. We live in an era of cinematic action-adventure games that tend to be much more on rails and less diverse in the ways of true choice and consequence RPG mechanics. To some, this may feel unpolished or not as graphical as a modern game should, but honestly, some of the best RPGs seem to have that sort of less polished and less cinematically focused presentation. No, but seriously, if I can't see the sweat dripping from the pores of my face from the inside of my space helmet, I'm uninstalling.
See, I'm not a monster. I'm just ahead of the curve.
Okay, now moving on to the whole issue with the scope and scale of the game universe. Upon hearing that Starfield would have 100 star systems with over 1,000 planets to explore, a lot of people completely lost their mind with disbelief.
Well, then everyone loses their minds!
They immediately started calling Starfield No Man's Skyrim, skeptical that Bethesda could ever flesh out a game world this big with meaningful content and purpose. Despite the fact that Todd Howard reassured everyone that Bethesda games have been utilizing procedural generation to flesh out their worlds for quite some time now. I do, however, understand the fear that this game will try to cram so much that they'll have to sacrifice handcrafted worlds and meaningful exploration with barren planets and landscapes that don't really reward exploration and time spent on those worlds with anything other than a mountainside view or the occasional sunset.
Over 100 systems. Over 1,000 planets.
Chosen! What? Oh, this is heavy.
Honestly, after the mistakes that games like No Man's Sky and Cyberpunk have made, I don't think that Bethesda is so tone-deaf that they're not aware that this is potentially a misstep for their game, and honestly, I think that's just one of the reasons why they delayed the game. You have to also understand that this has already been described by Bethesda as a more grounded or realistic space RPG, so I'm willing to bet right off the bat that a lot of those 1,000 planets are just going to be floating rocks with harsh atmospheres or rocky landscapes that no one has colonized or hardly set foot on. And that's fine.
Why?
Because that's realistic. But I think the goal is to set the foundations for a game that can be built by the player and have you sort of create the game you want. And again, everyone is so upset about these planets being bland and quote copy-pasted, but you already know the campaign is going to be good and the story and missions will take you to so many places, so what's wrong with having extra content on top of that, ready for DLC, add-ons, mods, whatever, to be built upon over the years. Now let's talk about Bethesda's somewhat aggressive monetization of their IPs and their shift away from a single-player focus. One of those two things is probably more true than the other, although Fallout 76 proves that Bethesda is prone to the same corpo greed as any other major game developer.
All you care about is money.
As it stands, I would say that the biggest threat to Starfield in that regard would be the continuation of Creation Club content. There's been no official word I'm aware of confirming whether or not Starfield will have Creation Club content, though I wouldn't doubt it. But I've said it before and I'll say it again, if Starfield does have Creation Club, I don't see anything wrong with having an in-game store that you can purchase additional items and add-ins for a game, as long as what's being sold is substantial, original, and fairly priced. I don't agree with just rehashing free mods and turning them into official paid content, unless the developer does it significantly better than the modders. But at that point, shouldn't it just be in a patch or part of an upcoming DLC? That would be the right way to monetize that content, in my opinion. And as for the last point about Bethesda slowly shifting from a single-player focus, I agree with the concern in general, but I don't think we have any reason to believe that Starfield will be anything other than a single-player RPG. I think Bethesda realized where they went wrong with Fallout 76, and it seems like they're dedicated to getting back to their roots and delivering another great single-player focused game like Skyrim. If you want to re-release Starfield 18 times over the next 10 years, that's fine too, just don't charge me for it, because I probably won't play it. If I do, it's because there's something worth getting back into it for, so give me the remaster or whatever for free. Because I bought the original and played it from day one, and that's a pro-consumer move. I think huge companies like Bethesda continuing to make games like Starfield just shows that despite whatever they've done, they're still committed to delivering on the expectations that their fans have.
What were you trying to prove? That deep down, everyone's as ugly as you.
Well, that about wraps it up, you guys. I think we've come to some rational conclusions and found that some of the criticism of Starfield can be a little dramatic.
You just couldn't let me go.
Anyway, I want to hear your thoughts and opinions on the matter, so comment down below and let me know what you think. Also, be sure to check out Force Gaming. Links below, go subscribe and comment on his video and let him know what you think as well. Tell him Starfield Guy sent you. Also, subscribe to my channel for obvious reasons, and stay tuned for the next video as we look forward to the future.